Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about a really powerful model called ORE. And what it does is it completely flips the script on how businesses look at their performance. We're going to see how it turns basic customer data from just a simple report card into a roadmap for finding these huge opportunities that most companies just completely miss. Let's dive in.
So here's how we'll break it down. First, we'll tackle a really common problem, the limits of basic benchmarking. Then, we'll get into a flexible measurement tool called OWA and see how the ORE model builds on that to give us a much clearer picture. After that, we'll jump into a real-world case study to see it in action, and we'll wrap up by looking at how all of this helps you make smarter decisions.
All right, let's get right into it with our first section, the benchmarking dilemma. Most companies are constantly trying to rank their customers to figure out who's on top. But what if that whole approach, that simple ranking, is actually holding you back? Let's take a look.
On the surface, this seems like a pretty simple question, right? Is a good customer the one who buys the most, or maybe the one who brings in the highest profit? Well, as you're about to see, the answer is almost never that simple, and if you focus on the wrong thing, you can hide some really serious problems in your business.
So this is the standard tool, a customer profit and loss report, or P&L. It's pretty straightforward, just revenue minus cost for each customer. Now in this example, customer A looks like the winner. They're number one based on profit. But take a look at customer C. They have by far the highest sales, but they're ranked dead last. And that right there is our first clue that a simple ranking can be really, really misleading.
And here's the bottom line. This P&L approach misses a huge piece of the puzzle. It just doesn't capture all the complex behind-the-scenes costs that go into actually serving each customer. We're talking about things like shipping, customer support, how much time your sales team spends with them, all that stuff. And that is the exact problem we need to solve.
Okay, so how do we build something better? Well, to really get the ORE model, we first need to understand a concept it's built on, called order-weighted averaging, or OWA. Now, it sounds a little technical, but seriously, stick with me for a second, because this is the key that unlocks everything else. The easiest way to think about OWA is as a super flexible kind of average. Instead of weighting each number by its actual value, you assign weights based on the rank. So you put weight on the best performing metric, the second best, the worst, and so on. This is cool because it lets you model different mindsets, from a totally balanced, let's look at everything equally view, to a super pessimistic, worst-case scenario view, where you only care about the single biggest problem. Let's make this real with a quick example. Here we've got 3 customer accounts. The model calls them decision-making units, or DMUs, but just think of them as customers. And for each one, we have 3 different cost metrics. And for this, just remember, the lower the number, the better the performance. Okay, here's where OWA gets interesting. There's a setting called ORNESS. You can think of it like a risk tolerance dial. If we set that dial right in the middle at 0.5, we get a balanced view. See how each of DMU1's cost metrics gets the same weight? It's just like a normal average. The result is a score of 0.294, which is the lowest of the 3, making it number 1. Easy enough, right? But watch what happens when we crank that risk dial all the way up to 1.0. Now we're looking at a pure worst-case scenario. All of the weight, 100% of it, goes to the single highest cost metric. For DMU1, that's 0.645. And just like that, its score shoots up and its rank completely tanks, from first place all the way down to third. And that is the whole point. This is the big dilemma. The very same customer can be your absolute best performer or your worst, and it all just depends on the lens you use to look at them. This creates so much uncertainty. So how in the world do you find one single, fair, stable way to understand performance? Well, that is where our hero comes in, the Order-Rated Effectiveness Model, or ORE. It was designed for this exact situation, to solve the problem of these shifting ranks and give us one clear, stable score we can actually trust. So, how does it do it? Well, you can think of the ORE model as being like a wise judge. It doesn't just pick one strategy, one point on that risk dial. Instead, it looks at the entire range of possible OI scores for every single customer, and it mathematically finds the one single score that is the most comprehensive and stable across all of those possibilities. Pretty clever.
Okay, the theory is great, but let's see what happens when the rubber meets the road. We're going to look at a case study from a big consumer packaged goods company that used OKR and completely changed how they saw their own business.
So the company started by taking a close look at 52 of its customer accounts, which, as we know, the model calls DMUs.
And they didn't just glance at the surface. Nope, they compared these 52 accounts across 13 different cost-to-service metrics. We're talking everything from logistics to order processing to sales expenses. They wanted the whole picture.
And the results were, well, kind of shocking. The OR model showed them clear as day that their most profitable customers were often really inefficient to service. And even crazier, some of their lower margin customers were actually running like well-oiled machines. The big takeaway was obvious. Their profit rankings were totally hiding these huge operational problems.
Okay, finding out you have a problem is step one. But here's where the ORA model becomes a real game changer. It doesn't just wave a flag and say something's wrong. It gives you a tool to pinpoint exactly what the issue is and with which customer. This is that tool. It's a Z-score table, which is just a fancy way of saying it mathematically flags anything that's a statistical outlier. See that item in red? That tells you that for cost metric Y, customer 27 is performing more than 3 standard deviations worse than their peers. That's a massive red flag. You know exactly where to start investigating. But, just as important, look at the green item. That's a best practice. It shows customer 41 is knocking it out of the park on metric Z, giving you a model of success you can learn from.
And this brings us to the final, and honestly, the most important part of this whole thing. How do you take this amazing data and turn it into real-world business decisions that actually make a difference?
This slide just sums it up perfectly. It's a fundamental shift in thinking. The old way was all about asking, who is our best customer? It's an external judgment. The new way, with OR, lets you ask a much more powerful internal question. Where can we be more efficient? See the difference? The focus shifts from judging your customers to improving your own operations.
And this has a massive impact on a company's culture. The model creates real accountability. It gives teams a clear view of exactly which costs they can control. And as this quote from the study shows, that empowers them to take ownership and make real, meaningful improvements.
So, if you remember one thing, let it be this. The ORA model takes something every single company has, customer P&L data, and it completely transforms it. It's no longer just a backward-looking report card. It becomes a forward-looking, detailed roadmap to make your business run better. This whole idea forces us to look in the mirror, to look at our own processes, not just our bottom line. And it leaves us with a question that every single business should be asking itself: what hidden opportunities are just sitting there, waiting in your data? I hope this has given you something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.